Tonight on the Fanatic Forum, we've got a lot to talk about here. It's the last ride with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but was it a good one? We'll discuss it. Plus, we've got free comics, and some new loot as well. And we're going to get to all that right after this. Hey everybody, happy Friday and welcome to the Fanatic Forum. I'm your Fanatic and host, George Bueller. Oh man, it's a good show today here because we finally get to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I've been wanting to talk about this for a week or so, so I'm excited to talk about that. Plus, we've got free comics from Free Comic Book Day, new comics this week, plus a little bit of patriotic loot here, so all kinds of fun stuff on the forum here, so can't wait for that. But yeah, just of course, we will talk about our comics first, and then we'll do our little message from Comic Books for Kids, and then we'll get to Guardians of the Galaxy. So you can save this first half of the show, go watch Guardians if you haven't seen it yet, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it, because we're going to spoil the heck out of this one here. So hope everybody's doing all right out there, and I see Dave Mattingly chiming in already. Good evening, Fanatics. Good evening to you, sir. And oh, I love you guys. Yeah, we're going to get to that and more, Dave. Anyway, so of course, Free Comic Book Day was last week around the country. Of course, around here there was, in the Louisville area, there was this horse race, the greatest 2 minutes in sports, whatever else. Even though it's always funny when somebody says the fastest 2 minutes in sports, like, how? That doesn't make sense. So, greatest 2 minutes in sports, the Kentucky Derby was last weekend, but around the country, and frankly to all the geeks around the world, it was Free Comic Book Day. So there was lots of good stuff to be had. Clower Comics had quite a stack and good crowd as well, both at our Elizabethtown and Shepherdsville stores. Because, of course, if you guys don't know already, I do work at the Elizabethtown store. So what they call me now, I'm the digital sales consultant, or, well, I don't know. Anyway, I'm doing the online sales. So there you go. But anyway, so we had basically tons of free books, and we've got 5 books each person. So, of course, I got to play by the rules myself here. And I got my 5 free books. So 2 of the big books this week. First off, the Spider-Man Venom book here, kind of a preview of what's coming in the new, basically the current Spider-Man books and in the current Venom book. Also, we got a preview for what I'm very excited about, coming from Jonathan Hickman and Brian Hitch, Ultimate Invasion. The Ultimate Universe is returning. Basically, the maker, the evil Reed Richards, wants to bring this universe back into existence because it's been wiped from existence. The only people who survived it were the Maker and Miles Morales. So the Maker wants to recruit Miles on this quest, and Miles is a little reluctant, but he may be pulled along whether he wants to or not. So that's coming up this summer. Looking very forward to that. The other big Marvel book here was the Uncanny Avengers. So we kind of see what's coming up with Avengers, with X-Men, because X-Men got a whole bunch of stuff coming up in the summer and the fall with the Fall of X storyline. But the Uncanny Avengers are coming back because apparently the X-Men and the Avengers kind of need each other again, especially, the X-Men. But there's another preview for an upcoming story that, let's see here if it gives a creative team on here. Oh yeah, another Hickman story here. Yeah, but basically a series called Gods had Doctor Strange in it and some mysterious characters. So I'm not sure what that's all about, but the art looked great. I think it was Valerio Schiti was the artist on it. So yeah, just looked really cool, but kind of maybe some magic stuff going on. I don't know, but something kind of interesting there. So, Dave chiming in, we were talking about the Ultimate Invasion, saying the evil Reed is a piece of work. Yeah, the Maker is a really, really good villain, but he is a bastard, as they say. Yeah, he's bad. Let's see. Next one, I couldn't pass this one up here. Last year's biography comic was the I Am Jack, which is basically all about Jack Kirby. And so that same artist, I don't know if he, oh yeah, Tom Scully, that same artist did a new biography comic on Stan Lee. So this is basically just a preview of it. There's a lot more to come. There's a much larger volume, but this is kind of like a preview of Stan's story here. But we kind of get the early years, the formative years of Marvel, kind of a little bit of a taste of his relationship with Jack Kirby, with Steve Ditko, and it is definitely a warts and all kind of story here. This isn't just pro Stan Lee, it's about Stan, but, it does show kind of, some of the real bit of their relationships they had, especially when things started getting a little more successful. But great art in here. Just some interesting stuff there. So yeah, interesting pickup there. Couldn't pass that one up. Of course, DC has got their big one here. They got their big Dawn of DC initiative going on, so they're doing a lot of relaunches. Last week saw the new Green Arrow book. This week is Green Lantern. We'll talk about it. Of course, next week, I think we've got a new Titans book, a bunch of other stuff coming out. So, yeah, DC's got a lot of big weeks coming up here. But this is their big upcoming event called Night Terrors, which basically the plot of this essentially is someone or something, we don't know quite just yet, has apparently got a hold of every DC hero and some of the villains, apparently, and is making them go through their worst nightmares. So we get a quick preview of kind of a little bit what's going on here, a little bit from Damien's perspective. And then mostly this book serves as kind of like showing some of the designs for some of the nightmarish characters we're going to be seeing coming up. And basically there's kind of like a main storyline going on, and then apparently there's like one-shots for every DC title, or maybe even like 2 issues for some of those series. But they give you a nice checklist back in here too. So basically, lots of big stuff coming up for DC fans. A lot of books you're going to be purchasing. And then I couldn't pass up a good Jeff Lemire, Fish Flies. He's got an upcoming 6-issue series for Image Comics. Jeff's getting into the creepy stuff again here, but he's doing the art and the writing for this here. But yeah, don't want to say too much about this, but real creepy stuff here. But yeah, so if you are not a big fan of bugs and insects and you think they're completely disgusting and whatnot, you might want to stay away from this. Or if you want something to really creep you out, check it out. Either way, yeah, lots of cool stuff there. But there were tons of other books. There was you had Star Trek, you had some Dark Horse, Star Wars High Republic adventures coming out. There was a Ninja Turtles book, Garbage Pail Kids and Madballs. Yes, they're back, and they're back big. I've got preteens and teenagers coming in the shop asking me about Garbage Pail Kids, and I'm like, how do you know about this stuff? I mean, it's I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper or anything. I'm excited they know about it, but I'm just completely puzzled how a franchise that has been, well, for the most part, kind of dead for almost last 20 some odd years plus, even more than that, maybe even close to 30 years. But yeah, I mean, they're back into it. The comics are bringing them back. The cards are coming back. Kids want the vintage cards now. It's fascinating. I love it. Bring it on. But yeah, nonetheless, there's Garbage Pail Kids and Madballs comics available. Trying to think what else. The Smurfs, they had a 65th anniversary book. So all kinds of cool stuff there. Power Rangers Academy. Yeah. All sorts of things. And of course, there were a few other selections that for mature readers, I'm not talking about dirty stuff. I'm just talking about, stuff that's not for kids. So there was an Umbrella Academy book. There's a couple other indie books there. So yeah, stuff is not for the little stuff. You're 17 on up. But that's the fun thing about Free Comic Book Day. They color code the books there, so green is for everybody. That's even safe for little kids. Blue is basically for kind of like preteen, teenagers on up. And then the red's basically for 17 on up. And so, like I said, it's nothing, too terribly explicit or whatnot, but just something maybe a little bloody, maybe horror stuff, just mature. They couldn't even understand what the content is, but that's what that's all about. But just like I said, some great color coding. So all the comic shops around the country participated. So you can probably go to your local comic book store now, and they still may have some issues left. So check them out, and there you go. Might get some free stuff, turning on some new things there. So, but we had a lot of good selections for this week for new comics here. I have several independents here, and then yeah, that's right, Dave. The Smurfs 65th anniversary. So it was neat. Kind of like nice little thumbing out through the years of just little comic strips and whatnot. So yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, Smurfs have been around that long. So they started out as, I guess, comic strips, and then later became the cartoon and whatnot. But yeah, been around for a very long time. Anyway, so back to the new stuff here. So I've got 3 independent selections here, and then 1 each for Marvel and DC. But starting with Marvel here, we got to go Amazing Spider-Man issue 25. Now, this issue does see a lot of variants. The Disney variants that Marvel's been running throughout Spider-Man, where you get Disney characters, recreating famous comic book covers, whatnot. We've had like Avengers #1, Fantastic Four #1, the Hulk, New Avengers. We've got a Captain Marvel homage coming up, an Iron Man homage coming up. So all kinds of stuff. But anyway, so it's a lot of fun to get recreating, different, scenes with all these Disney characters. We had Goofy as the Hulk. That was good. Yeah. But anywho, but this is the A cover here. But the storyline that's been going on currently since issue 21 has basically been that there was some sort of like godlike creature going after Peter Parker, saying he needed him for some sort of ceremony, whatever else. So he and Mary Jane, and even a little help from Norman Osborn, have been trying to stop this thing. They end up finding the dimension it comes from. They go over there. Essentially, it's kind of a situation where they got to get out of there, but only one of them can go. Peter's going to let Mary Jane go home, but Mary's like, no, this thing's hunting you. Get out of here. And she basically pushes him through, and, Mary Jane's stuck on the other side while Peter gets to go home. So Peter, of course, is in our time, tries to get back to her as quickly as we can. When he finds her, gets back to her in issue 24, a lot more time has passed than what Peter thinks. Apparently time works differently in that realm. And so this issue 25, we find out whatever happened to Mary Jane. So yeah, a very interesting book here. Almost heartbreaking at times when you get to the end. Apparently the next issue 26, Zeb Wells has said, who's currently writing the book right now, Zeb Wells has said on his social media that Marvel has instructed him to stay away from conventions after issue 26. So there's a lot of speculation of what's going on, but yeah, we might be losing somebody. So we'll see here. But yeah, we may be, Zeb Wells may be igniting some comic fans out there. So, but I said there's a lot of speculation. I have my theories as well, but I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen here. But anyway, so a lot of stuff going on there. Over at DC, like I said, we've got a Green Lantern #1 coming at us. Jeremy Adams is the writer, and Hermonico does the art. The art is beautiful. Love it. It's starting off, it's good. It's kind of kicking off from the last Green Lantern series, where essentially Sector 2814 has been kind of put under some kind of like quarantine, double secret probation, I don't know, basically, but the Guardians are no longer around. There's a new kind of regime in charge, kind of a council, so to speak, that runs the whole galaxy. So they're running the Lanterns, and they basically are saying, we're not going to worry about Earth right now because it's caused a lot of trouble. It is the cause of a lot of trouble, and they've got plenty of other things to protect it, so guess what? We don't need to worry about that. And all the Earthbound Guardians, John Stewart, Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, the list, Jessica Cruz, the list goes on and on. A lot of them had a very strong, debate to this, and so decided, you know what? we're still going to be lanterns. We still have our powers, but we're done working for this council. So we're just going to stay on Earth. See you later. So everybody's grounded on Earth right now. Like I said, they still have their rings, but they're not quite Green Lanterns. So you got the main story with Hal here and a backup story with Jon Stewart. I kind of wish they were pointing to something a little bigger, but there's some hints possibly of some things going on here. So, we get a lot of, a lot of returning faces from our series that some people we haven't seen in a while, like Carol Fenris, haven't seen her in a bit. But yeah, so kind of, I'm still going to stick with it, but I'm kind of hoping things pick up a little bit more. So we shall see. Next up for independent stuff here from American Mythology Productions. I have absolutely been loving this Night of the Living Dead Revanche series. This is issue 3. Of course, we get all these great photo covers here. There's very infamous the young girl who becomes zombified and turns on her mother. Yeah. Anyway, I've absolutely been loving this series. I'm a big fan of Night of the Living Dead. This is essentially a retelling of Night of the Living Dead, but it also kind of fills in the cracks of the story a little bit more, kind of gets a little bit of history with our characters, kind of shows them maybe, an hour or a few minutes before they all show up at the farmhouse in their own ways. So you get kind of a little more filling out of the characters here. You actually see the owners of the farmhouse and kind of what happens to them, what brought them to their state we see them in once everybody kind of arrives. Especially, Ben and Barbara and whatever else. So, just a fantastic series here. So I think issue 4 may be the last issue, or maybe it's a 5-issue series. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, love it, love it, love it. Can't recommend this book enough, especially if you're not a Living Dead fan. Yeah, at first I thought it was going to be kind of like a side story or whatever else. But then initially, when I first started reading the first issue, but then it became very clear, like, this is still Night of the Living Dead, but we're kind of giving you, it's almost like this is a director's cut. You're getting, maybe, a half hour to possibly an hour's worth more footage. So, yeah. So, excellent, excellent stuff here. Dave Mattingly has a comment saying about the Green Lanterns, now they're just green flashlights. Like I said, they still have their powers, they still do their thing, but yeah, they're not space cops anymore. They have to stay on Earth. So, if you're gonna, not join us, you got to stay on Earth, and you can't leave. You can be a lantern on Earth. You can't be a lantern anywhere else. So they're all grounded, like they've been bad. All right, next up here, we've got a new book here from Image Comics, Something Epic, from Simon Kutarowski, and this is a very interesting book here. I'm not 100% sure what's going on, whether this is an autobiographical tale about a person who, is trying to understand, growing up, trying to understand how they themselves can be a creator, be an artist, and understand the creative process and how to deal with it in a healthy way, or how to, understand maybe the things they come up with, the things they see, that sort of thing. Or we have a child that has reality manipulating abilities and can see things that other people can't see and create things that people can't see, but only he can see. And there's a lot of stuff going on here. So anyway, a very interesting book. Simon Kutarowski he does double duty here, both the art and the writing. But very interesting book. I'll want to see what happens next here. So that's a good sign. But like I said, I'm just a little puzzled. Like, is this kind of an autobiography sort of thing? Or is like this kid like a little Franklin Richards sort of thing here? So I am intrigued nonetheless. Of course, there's a lot of fun variant covers. There's a Terminator 2 homage cover. There's like a couple like video game homage covers. And then apparently there's like a super duper rare Howard the Duck movie poster homage that is like a 3D or lenticular cover or something like that. But we didn't have it at the shop. People have been looking for it, but it's an ultra rare one there. It's one of those like, $100 books. So we didn't get that first thing. But anyway, nonetheless, check it out. Something epic. One more from Image Comics, the 5th and final issue of Nemesis Reloaded. I've had a great time with this book here. This is kind of a remake of a book that Mark Millar did a few years back. He tried to get the rights going for a movie, and it kind of was in production hell for a while, so nothing ever came to be. But it also kind of prevented him from doing a sequel. So instead, he's done a remake here, where we see a character who's on a definite revenge streak against the city of Los Angeles, the mayor, a lot of cops, whatever else, for something in his past. This guy is kind of like an evil version of Batman because he's got tremendous wealth, tremendous resources. He's 5 steps ahead of everybody. He's almost like the perfect criminal, but he has no problem with guns and murdering people. And, he doesn't care about the peons of the city of Los Angeles. He cares about getting through his murderous wrath. Anywho, I won't spoil how things turn out, but what does happen is we get a heck of a twist ending I was not expecting here. And what's going to come about is the Millar-verse, basically everything Mark Millar has created over the years, is going to have its first ever crossover coming in July. Yes. Again, I don't want to spoil if anybody's curious about it, but one of his oldest properties, a series that he wrote a long time ago that has been turned into a film, is going to be crossing over with this book and also crossing over with a lot of other Millar-verse titles. So that runs a very large gambit. Your Jupiter Ascending, Huck, Starlight, Wanted, The Kingsman, the list goes on and on. So, yeah, very, very exciting. I'm hyped. Yeah. I like I said, did not hear about this thing coming up here. They kept it quiet until this book came out. But then, yeah, that last page was like, whoa! So, yeah, I'm excited about that. So, should be good stuff there. Anywho, we are going to take a bit of a station break here for Comic Books for Kids. And then when we come back, forgot my loot. Yes. Okay. Sorry there, folks. Yeah, we have a lot going on here. This came into the shop, and as you guys know, I am a huge Captain America fan, so I couldn't pass this one up here, but this is Captain America, the classic years, Joe Simon, Jack Kirby here, a beautiful 2-volume hardback set here that is basically the first 12 issues of Captain America after they came to Marvel. This is basically comics basically produced after World War II, but still taking place during World War II. But yeah, 2 volumes of this here, just fantastic stuff. Just a complete time capsule. So they didn't produce. There's no ads or anything like that. So it's just a reproduction of the stories and the covers and whatever else. And of course, they come in this very handy dandy, sturdy slipcase here too. So yeah, I saw that come in and said, "Oh, did we get that, or you ordered that for somebody?" "Oh no, we got that in." Okay, it's going on with me. Yeah, I couldn't pass that one up. So nonetheless, all right. So now we're going to take our station break for Comic Books for Kids, and then when we come back, we are going to spoil the heck out of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So stay tuned.
Comic Books for Kids provides comic books to kids in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S. It's a place where we can all work together to make sure every child has a comic book. 100% of all proceeds go towards the kids. It's about making a difference, and while they're in the hospital, allowing them to fly like a superhero, battle dragons, or rescue teddy bears. We are in every state in the country and now support over 160 hospitals. Every month, we add more.
Visit cb4k.org.
And we're back. And one other thing I need to tell you guys about here, very important, coming up in 2 weeks, May 27th, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., Creative Overflow. This is a first ever convention here. This is a celebration of pop culture artists. But this is a celebration for all things artists, whether you are a painter, crafter, You do leather work, you're a writer, you're a comic artist, whatever the case may be. It's all art all over the place here. This is going to be held at the Access Care Community Center on DuPont Road in Louisville. So $5 admission, 12 and under are free. Like I said, this is from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. May 27th, Creative Overflow. This is going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for this. Next week on the show, I'm going to be having artist and organizer of Creative Overflow, Bill Hood. So we're going to be talking all things geek and then also talking about Creative Overflow and what it's going to entail. So I'm looking very forward to that. And we'll, of course, be celebrating a lot of Bill's art as well because, I got a little bit of that hanging up here. Let's see, let me take this thing down here. So, basically my logo is kind of covering up there, but one of his Predator pieces is over here. So Bill's a friend, but yes, also basically putting together this fantastic event. So yes, looking forward to that. Yes, good deal, Dave. I hope so. All right, so now it's time to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So, yeah, this was definitely a ride that was an emotional journey. They've put out a lot of PSAs I've seen for, not really spoilering or anything like that, but basically kind of telling animal lovers or animal parents, this one might be rough, folks. So strap in, get your tissues ready, because there's going to be some, there will be some tears shed here. But yeah, this is definitely a goodbye to everybody. But what we also really get is a origin of Rocket Raccoon. We see where he came from, the treacherous, and very, tragic journey he kind of went on to get to where he is kind of in the first movie. And then, of course, where he goes today, once we get to the end of the third movie, kind of that whole hero's journey he goes on through all this. But we get really kind of his whole journey, where he came from, how he kind of came to be who he came to be. And it is all of this guy right here, the High Evolutionary, played by, hopefully I get this pronunciation right, Chukwudi Iwuji. We know him definitely from the Peacemaker series, so it's kind of nice getting a little bit of a Peacemaker reunion because we had a cameo appearance from Jennifer Holland, who is now Mrs. James Gunn, but she was in the Peacemaker series, and Chukwudi was as well. But his performance as the High Evolutionary is fantastic. In my opinion, he's going to go down as one of the best and most hated Marvel villains in the films, just because of what he does in the movie, basically torturing animals, doing experiments to get to his perfect blend of animal men, essentially. Because again, that's the whole point of the High Evolutionary. He sees something and wants to make it better. That is his whole motivation. But the way he does things is basically, essentially, he's torturing creatures, whether they be human, alien, animal, doesn't matter. He's not above, going the extra mile to get where he needs to go, whether it hurts the subject or not. It's all about the greater good in his mind. So even, you see kind of, a very strange appearance he has here, where almost like his face looks pulled back. There's a reason for that. But yeah, he himself is just enamored, fixated on improving everything. So you find out that he is responsible for creating multiple races. He is responsible for the Sovereign, who we knew in the second film. That's Aisha, all the gold people. So he created them. He's basically in charge of the Sovereign, who we meet, very early on in the film. We see Aisha once again, and we see our new character here of Adam Warlock. He was teased at the end of the second film. If you saw one of the end credit scenes, a lot of controversy around this guy here, played by Will Poulter here. A lot of fans were expecting the Adam Warlock we kind of know today, where he is the wise, cosmically aware, superpowered being, holder at one point of the Infinity Gauntlet and the Soul Stone, arch enemy of Thanos, whatever the case may be. Everybody was kind of expecting this particular character. and instead what we get is a very childlike character. He is super powered. That is, that is made evident very early on in the film. But he is definitely super powered, but he is very childlike. It's the whole movie essentially is a learning process for him. So he essentially starts off like a bull in a china shop, and essentially what ends up happening is he's just a big mess. So, yeah, it's it's a controversial take. I again didn't have too much of a problem with it because essentially they call him Adam Warlock, but what we have in the film is him. Him was the original character created in Fantastic Four, I believe, issue 87. And out of the cocoon, him is the superpowered, perfect golden being, but he has to learn everything. He is a babe in the woods. So, yeah, later on, Adam Warlock, and of course, we get by the end of the film, he does have a bit of a growing process. He suffers some tragedy. Aisha, his mother, does not make it out of the film. So, he goes through a lot of tragedy there. He sees things killed before him. He kills things, and he doesn't necessarily know how he feels about it. So he has to work through a lot of feelings. He also does have a friend he basically gets or kind of encounters early on in the movie that's this big brown fuzzy thing, and that also kind of teaches him a little bit more empathy as well. So, like I said, a controversial take on him, but I see where they were going, what they were doing with him, and so basically in the hands of another writer and director, Adam Warlock definitely will evolve a little bit further. He evolved by the time we get to the end of this 2.5-hour film, but he's got a lot more to go. So, again, we'll see how he turns out here. Got a couple of comments here. So Dave Manley chimes in saying that his favorite Marvel screen villain is still Kilgrave for the movies, but High Evolutionary is right up there with the best. Yeah, like I said, just throughout the film with the way he tortures Rocket and his friends, we'll get to them in a little bit. And of course you see him kind of, manipulating, trying to other things, other races, other creations he makes. And yeah, it's just his methods are terrible. He has zero remorse over it. Very vain sort of character. He gets extremely indignant when he is challenged. There's even an instance where Rocket essentially helps him fix a problem early in his experiments because Rocket is much smarter than the High Evolutionary, and this essentially enrages the Evolutionary. At a later time when he kind of thinks about this, because he's like, I created you, how are you better than me? That sort of mentality. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of reasons to hate this guy. And again, Chuck Woody's performance, he doesn't go over the top. He still stays kind of at a grounded level, even though he's still playing an evil villain. So the performance, everything, again, it's a star-making role for him. So, hats off to him. Dave's got another comment here saying Junior Adam Warlock does not have the wisdom of Solo Man. Yes, this is definitely a still. Well, they even said at the beginning of the film they hatched him out early. He wasn't quite done yet. That is the case. Matter of fact, in the comics, him dies at one point, kind of later on in the Fantastic Four stuff, and then goes back into the cocoon state, and then literally does not come out until the 90s when they bring him back for the Infinity Gauntlet stuff. And then that Adam Warlock is the wise, superpower, cosmic aware, wielder of the Infinity Gauntlet, that sort of thing like that. That Adam Warlock, he had to cook for another 20 years in comic time to do that. So, yeah, so again, not the same character here. Dave comments again here saying that the High Evolutionaries making a perfect world villain speech reminded me of the operative from Serenity. Good point. It's been a while since I've seen Serenity, but that was a very good villain speech of his, his whole raison d'etre, his why he's doing the things the way he's doing it. So, yeah, very, very good. Interesting. So, I got to show here one of my favorite parts of the movie is the uniforms that we see here for the Guardians. So they finally got, of course, we saw it in the Christmas episode. They are based on nowhere, so they have a home base. It's, there's a town, there's a community of other people, basically from all around the galaxy. We see even some familiar faces. The jeweler from the first movie, where Star-Lord is basically kind of using him as the fence for the, when he basically, the orb that essentially is holding the power gem. That guy with kind of like the weird looking mohawk thingies. We see him back. We see, a lot of other aliens and other familiar faces, kind of background from around the movies and from the Christmas special as well. So, we're getting a more organized group here at the end. Like I said, everybody gets uniforms. And what I love is these are the uniforms from the Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning run of Guardians, kind of in the very late 90s throughout the 2000s, that essentially most of these movies that were taken from, especially this lineup of the Guardians, involving Drax and Groot and Rocket and kind of Star-Lord, bringing him out of obscurity. That is all from the DNA run of the book. And so these uniforms are right out of that run. So yeah, I love seeing that. And then, we get to see a little bit of changes here. Kraglin, played by Sean Gunn, is still working through the Arrow. Still working. Yondu handed it down to him after he passed. Still working on trying to, fix this thing and, or kind of get it working for him, being able to use it in a fight effectively. Still practicing. Nebula gets stabbed in the chest with it, and she unflinchingly just tears it right out. And I don't even think it fully punctured. It's stuck in enough just to stick. But yeah, just a lot of comedy. Kind of we get a little bit of a blend of good darkness and comedy, because things start off with a very early part of Rocket's origin, and then we kind of get into the present day. Everybody's in nowhere. And we kind of see the state of everybody's in, even though Peter is kind of a drunken mess, still mourning of the loss of Gamora, and then also mourning the fact that his girlfriend came back from the dead, essentially, but it's a earlier version of Gamora before she became a member of the Guardians, got to know everybody, fell in love with Peter. So this is a much different, angrier, and confused version, because she's confused essentially of why this guy is trying to tell me how much I supposedly love him and I don't even know him. So yeah. Anywho, Drax is somewhat in the same state he's been in for the last couple of movies, but we definitely see a much more blossoming relationship between he and Mantis. Definitely a father-daughter sort of thing, which has been a lot of fun. Drax definitely leans into more of the, he's kind of getting older, especially when we jump ahead to towards the end of the film, where we find there's a bunch of children that have been taken by the High Evolutionary, or maybe even created by them. We're not 100% sure yet. But basically all the kids that have the white, they have this Village of the Damned look, where they all have this stark white hair. Maybe even some of them have abilities. One definitely does. But nonetheless, we get to see Drax kind of take on a fatherly role, helping these kids out, being able to communicate with him, because apparently Drax knows multiple languages. That was a buried lead there. So we do get to see kind of, a nice, a few blossoming moments of Drax with some character growth, but also kind of with a nice cap off of things for him as well. Nebula has a lot of growth. Of course, she gets a new arm. We get to see that in action a lot here. Yeah, let's see. I got a picture of that. Yeah, they basically kind of like a nano arm, where it can essentially turn into a lot of different weapons and tools and whatever else. So she's got this wicked cannon and things turns into. But yeah, so the indestructible cyborg here now has a nano arm that can be multiple things. So that's fun. We get to see a lot of growth from Nebula, a lot of, warming up, especially, because of course our main impetus throughout the film, we get, like I said, we talked a lot about the origin of Rocket, but also early on in the film, Adam Warlock finds nowhere, and essentially he's been tasked with getting Rocket and bringing him back to the High Evolutionary, because that's some proprietary property of his, and he wants it back. because basically it's been gone for a while and needs to be back here. And what happens is they get in a fight. Rocket gets mortally injured and put into a coma, and then basically when they're trying to treat him, find out that there's this device that's on his heart that's like a kill switch essentially, and because he is proprietary property, he has to have a specific code to take, to basically to disengage this kill switch so we can treat him. So instead, Rocket is basically in a coma for a majority of the movie. And while he's in the coma state, we get to see kind of flashbacks, images from his past, more stories fleshing things out there. And in doing so, we get basically kind of one of the more heartbreaking moments, because we get, we see Rocket in kind of an earlier stage. His first words he ever speaks are hurts. So I mean, just it's it's, like I said, just a heartbreaking scene of kind of seeing some things that happens, some experiments, basically some experiments that happen to Rocket. They basically allow him to be super smart, allow him to talk, but at a great cost nonetheless. But while Rocket's in captivity, he meets 3 other friends. Lila, who basically is kind of like an otter, but has been experimented on and has like robot arms. Teefs, who's a walrus in some sort of like wheelchair-esque device. And then Floor, who is a cute little bunny, but then has spider legs and then some sort of like metal thing going across her mouth that allows her to speak, but basically kind of gives her a very horrifying, almost like the broken toys in Toy Story, have a very twisted look to them. So she's this great juxtaposition of this cute little bunny. She has a cute little voice and just a sweet little innocent thing, but then her appearance is completely horrifying. But nonetheless, these are the friends that Rocket makes. They all have plans that basically once they get to go to Counter Earth, they get to see, they get to go see the sky. They're not in cages anymore. They have this wonderful life about them. But then basically, as the movie moves on, Rocket essentially enrages the High Evolutionary because he, is smarter than him, fixes his problems for him, but this embarrasses the Evolutionary. And so Rocket essentially finds out the plans the Evolutionary has, that, he's got all these perfect beings that he's created that are a blend of animal and human. He wants to put them on this planet he's created for them called Counter Earth, which essentially is Earth, but it's filled with these animal people. But there's no place for Batch 89, which is Rocket and his friends. So they're all to be essentially terminated. So Rocket, in true Rocket fashion, has been stealing parts. He basically makes a device that is able to fake a card reader, bust all of his friends out. They get out, but then guards show up, and one by one, Rocket sees his friends get killed. This is definitely one of the hardest scenes in the movie. Just absolutely tragic because you get to know these guys. They're lovable. They're very cute. And then, in this very brutal scene, they're just gunned down. Rocket, of course, takes revenge on them, and then does attack the High Evolutionary for this. And what ends up happening is you don't see how bad the wounds are, but you can tell that Rocket just goes completely ham on the High Evolutionary, tearing out his face. And then later on, we do find out that the appearance of the High Evolutionary, as I point out, this weird stretch marks, it kind of looks like he just is a reject from the Terry Gilliam movie Brazil. Like he's had some kind of weird facelift here, but that is a mask because I'm not going to reveal, but his face is a horrific, kind of very Red Skull-esque appearance. If the Red Skull also got really messed up. Rocket took a lot of revenge on the High Evolutionary's face, and so he had to repair a lot of damage to himself to make him look better than he was then. But nonetheless, we kind of, a lot of other things we get to in the movie. Peter and Gamora's relationship. We see Peter definitely still kind of pushing the we're boyfriend, girlfriend, I love you, your death was a terrible thing to me, but it's even more messed up that you're back. That sort of thing, and then Gamora's just completely, she's basically at this point in the movie hanging out with the Ravagers. She reluctantly has to go with the Guardians on this mission here to help save Rocket and basically, get this code to deactivate the kill switch to save their friend. And on the way, she does learn to kind of, like the Guardians, to kind of get to know them, to not be so angry with them, but the still relationship is not there. We do finally get to see a little maturity coming from Peter. He does openly admit that, yes, he did lose his temper and almost kill the galaxy by punching Thanos in Infinity War, so his bad. And then by the end of the film, he accepts the fact that this is not his Gamora. He's glad that Gamora is still alive. Maybe one day, I don't know, but he comes to terms that this is not his girl. And so, she goes back to her family, which is the Ravagers. So we get to see Stallone come back as Starhawk. We get to see basically the Sorcerer Supreme of the 31st century, which is the red dragony sort of thing like that, which is very cool. Michael Rosenbaum comes back as Martin X. So Miley Cyrus did not come back as the computer voice, but she was replaced by Tara Strong, so a classic voiceover actress there. So yeah, I had no problem with that. But so we get to see at least a little bit of growth from Peter. But the interesting thing is that wrapping things up for the movie here, Drax and Nebula stay on Nowhere. Drax has got a bunch of these refugee kids now and other people. He's going to kind of take this, fatherly, kind of role sort of thing like that. So he's going to stay, not, go gallivanting around the galaxy anymore. Nebula's going to stay too. Gamora goes back with the Ravagers. Peter decides to go home because he's like, you know what? I haven't been on Earth since I left. And of course there was the whole Infinity Gauntlet thing, but he hasn't been basically home to where he grew up. Essentially, he was abducted by Yondu when he was a child. So he does find out that his grandfather is still alive. So he essentially, at the end of the film, goes back home and is reunited with his grandfather, who's basically been waiting the whole time. I don't know if that woman who answered the door was like his wife or like a home care nurse. They didn't quite make that plain. But nonetheless, he's got at least companionship there at the home with him. But there's a lot of pictures on the wall. You see that basically he's still been holding a candle waiting for his grandson to return. So it's a lovely reunion. So Peter's going to stay on Earth for a while. So, and of course, there's a little bit more to that. We'll get to that in just a sec here. So, and Dave Mattingly chiming in saying that he didn't realize that Tara Strong was the new Mainframe voice. Yes, thank you, Mainframe. I couldn't remember what her name was there. But yeah, so there you go. It was Tara Strong. So who also did the voice for Miss Minutes for the Loki series. So, and of course, she's done a lot of DC voiceovers as well. So yeah, I think she was not the original Harley Quinn, but she's been a later Harley Quinn. So yeah, she's done lots of other great voiceover work. Dave also chimes in saying that, like they said on the Hero Movie podcast, it's easy to forget that 3 of the Guardians in the final scene aren't even there. They're just CG. Yeah, let's actually get to that. So, as we're, of course, wrapping up here, Groot, Rocket, Kraglin, Cosmo are still on the team. They are joined by Adam Warlock. And then one of the refugees, apparently she has powers and is more than likely Phyla-Vell, who is kind of a later Captain Marvel, I guess, legacy character. She's the protector of the universe, has the cosmic power, sort of thing like that. But yeah, she's got white hair. So maybe we're kind of laying the groundwork to future Guardians there. But yeah, like I said, we get to the last scene there, and basically there's only like a couple of humans and everybody else is CG. So yeah, so we shall see. But I love the fact that we got a lot more Cosmo in this movie. The interplay between her and Kraglin, the whole, basically Kraglin called her a bad dog, and then so the whole thing. I mean, it's like we have a essentially this is kind of like the Lakia story here. So we have a Russian cosmonaut dog who was sent off into space and never returned. We don't know what happened to her, but apparently she must have passed through some cosmic waves that made her super smart to the point where she is telepathic and telekinetic. She can move things with her mind, and we find out in the movie she's very strong too. She can basically move an entire spaceship and kind of hold it in place to get all the, you know, people, you know, off the ship and onto nowhere. You know, so she gets a couple really big scenes, but the fun interplay, and then finally, you know, she does good things there, you know, and Kraglin can't help but call her a good dog, and then, you know, of course, all dogs want to be loved and want to be praised, and so Cosmo is no different. And I love it too that basically she knows English, but she speaks with a broken Russian accent. So just, you know, but I've loved Cosmo since the DNA run of the book. Like the Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning. So yeah, she's been a favorite character, and she's the chief of security of Nowhere. So there you go. So yeah, just absolutely love it. But yes, like I said, we get to see a lot of growth there. We Mantis is interesting because we do get a lot more from her, a lot more creative uses. She's kind of learning more about her powers. We get some interesting scenes of, you know, basically her using a guard and basically making this poor guard go through a number of emotions to essentially take out the other guards. But so, you know, so she's definitely using it more creatively and in combat and whatever else. But finally, we get to kind of the conclusion of the movie where, you know, she realizes she kind of needs to go off on her own, kind of a journey of self-discovery. Of course, while she and Drax and a few of the other Guardians are locked up in the High Evolutionary ship, they come across these giant creatures that kind of looks like something out of an H.P. Lovecraft nightmare. They're all mouth and tentacles, essentially. There's these big creatures, whatever else. Well, you know, basically Mantis, using her basically emotional powers, is able to calm them and realize, oh, these are just they're scared creatures. They don't even eat people. They eat batteries. So now this cute little Mantis character has befriended these three giant monster things. They just kind of follow her around like puppy dogs. So Mantis is going to go on this journey of self-discovery with these three giant creatures with her. So she's going to be fine. But we get some great combat scenes here. We get a couple of awesome fight scenes with the Guardians all teaming together. Kind of some nice slow-mo camera stuff here. So we get to, you know, everybody kind of get to work together, get their big fight moments in too. And Groot goes through a lot of changes. We see a physical change with him being much, you know, getting almost closer to the height he was in the first film. But he's way more buff. Like he's fortified now, you know, with you know, vitamins and iron, I guess. I don't know, but nonetheless. But also we get to see basically he's good for hiding guns. Because he scans as a biological, but underneath his plates of tree bark and roots and whatever else, he can hide weaponry. So there you go. So he hides a couple of Peter's guns and then hides 4 guns for himself. So that was a fun thing there. But of course, we get this great scene shot here, as you can see, with Rocket once again riding shotgun on Groot's shoulders, firing away while Groot's fighting stuff here. So this is one of the big fight scenes I'm talking about towards the end once Rocket gets better. And yeah, so we do get some great interplay between Rocket and Groot. But yeah, like I said, definitely a much more buff Groot. We also see a great escape scene where Groot sprouts wings. So yeah, interesting stuff here. But as Dave kind of pointed out, in a scene, you know, late in the movie, where kind of the Guardians are kind of saying their goodbyes, all kind of appreciating each other, whatever else. Interesting enough, kind of one of the kind of running bars in the whole series, the whole thing in the movie, is this other Gamora doesn't understand Groot. She just hears, I am Groot, I am Groot. Doesn't understand him like the others do. By the time we get to the end of the movie, she understood what he said. And so she you realize that, you kind of get to know them, get to see his thing more. And so James Gunn kind of gives the audience a gift because, like, one of the last lines spoken in the movie, Groot says, "I love you guys." And so we're like, oh, you kind of, it's a tender moment, it's a wonderful moment. You're kind of wondering yourself, oh, was, Groot now speak English? No, that's the audience hanging around Groot long enough to be able to understand him. So that was James Gunn's little gift to his audience there, that we get to hang around these guys long enough that we finally get to understand Groot. So, yeah, I love that. Yeah, so, yeah, Dave, Mattingly chimed in there too. Yeah, so we, the audience, finally get to, that almost makes me a little teary-eyed. But yeah, so it's like right there at the end, we get to be part of the team. So I love that. Dave saying that these creatures were the same as the giant pink sharktopusses. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I thought I recognized them. Yeah, so right at the beginning of the Guardians 2, where they're fighting these things, yeah, they eat batteries. So it's those things. Okay. So, yeah, thanks for the save. I was about to tear up. But yeah, so just like I said, I really, really enjoyed the movie here. And interestingly enough, we did not lose a Guardian. We got faked out with Rocket being mortally wounded and being in a coma for most of the movie. We get faked out by the end of the movie with Peter, where everybody's trying to escape High Evolutionary ship. Peter goes back on the ship for the Zune, and we find out later why. And when he does, we get a fake out like in part 2 where he's out in space without a mask, without any sort of, spacesuit or whatever else. And so he's freezing up. He's dying. And even to the point where his face starts getting bloated up. So like, oh my God, it's like, we're gonna lose Peter right here. And nope, we fake it out. We were able to bring him back and save him at the last minute. But yeah, it's a tender way that it's done. But yeah, like I said, we get faked out. We think we're gonna lose a guard. Actually, we essentially get faked out by almost every member. Like we almost think Drax dies. I'll show you this shot here where basically, Mantis and Gamora holding him. Yeah, he gets shot like point blank in the chest. But okay, well it's just he's wounded, but he's not dead. So so it's like I said, we get a lot of moments where we're worried about all the Guardians at one point, but we don't lose a one. So everybody kind of gets their own little happy ending. So at this point in the movie, Rocket's captain of the team. He's in charge. He's now got the Zune. Peter saved it for him. And interestingly enough, we kind of get a little bit of, some 80s rock. We start going into the 90s with our songs. But then the last song that's played is Florence and the Machine's Dog Days Are Over, because Rocket goes to the 2000s. That's the first song he picks. So there you go. So it kind of, caps off, we get a, a 70s to the 2000s playlist there. So I'm not sure if there's any particular meaning to that one, or if it just kind of just, the obvious, Dog Days Are Over. Everything's good for everybody for the most part, I guess, for now. So I guess until the next universe threatening event. But, there you go. So, yeah, as I said, we're just, I enjoyed the film. It was a nice goodbye. It was very emotional. Like I said, some tough scenes with basically anything involving any animals being harmed. But fortunately, all these animals are CG. PETA even went so far as to compliment the film for showing kind of I'm not sure how accurate, but at least emotionally what it's like to kind of see animals being tortured and whatever else. So yeah, so at least there was some good was made out of that. Oh yes, and of course we did get a reprise of "Come and Get Your Love." Yeah, can't forget that one, Dave. Thank you. And yeah, and of course there's Dave sent me a great message right before the show here, reminding me that it's not a trap, it's just a face-off. So yeah, that's a great joke. Of course, the picture follows the High Evolutionary with his face off, and that's still a gross face. But yeah, so we do get 2 cutscenes when we get to the end of the movie here. First one showing our new Guardians team. They're on a planet where these weird insect kind of things are terrorizing the people of this planet, or maybe the certain town, and the Guardians are all just kind of just sitting around talking about what their favorite songs are while they're waiting for these things to come into range and then just opening fire on them. So the gang's all there, doing their thing once again. Kraglin finally gets to learn how to use the arrow, just like Yondu did. Even almost kind of, we get a little bit of a brief Michael Rooker cameo, where, he kind of does like an Obi-Wan sort of thing like that. Use your feelings, boy, sort of thing like that. So, yeah, we get a little fun there. So, and then the other scene we get is Pete just hanging around the breakfast table and talking about the neighbor and his loser son who won't mow the lawn. So, but then we do get the tease, the legendary Star-Lord will return. So, I'm curious what that means. Will we see Chris Pratt return to the role? He's kind of been a little not sure. I was like, Dave Bautista certainly said, yeah, this is the last ride for me. I love Drax. Drax made my career. Thank you very much. But yeah, I'm going to move on to other things. Zoe Saldana has kind of said, no, this is it for me too. Bradley Cooper has said that he wants to basically, direct, and write movies, as opposed to being in other people's movies and whatnot. So whether or not he comes back to voice Rocket, I don't know. But somebody very easily could, do the Rocket voice, and so we're good there. So yeah, remains to be seen from there. Same goes for Groot. We don't necessarily need Vin Diesel. That voice can be done probably by somebody else, or whatever else. I don't know. So either way, there could be lots of things there. But for how Star-Lord comes back, we got a couple of big Avengers movies coming up in 2025 and 26 respectively, so we could see him there. Also, that particular title of the legendary Star-Lord does ring to a brief series where Star-Lord was grounded on Earth, was not going around the galaxy, did not have the other Guardians with him, and he had some adventures on Earth, did interact with some other superheroes, Kitty Pryde. So whether we're going to see some of that, don't know. But yeah, so there's a lot of implications what that can mean. So, an interesting point too is that I didn't kind of realize this while watching the film initially. We never saw the Star-Lord mask through the entire movie. He did not wear it at all. He also didn't have his little jetpack thingies either. So I guess, I don't know, he just decided he wasn't going to fly. So, he flew in ships and, flew in spacesuits. But yeah, did not, didn't wear the traditional Star-Lord mask. So don't know about that. Dave's got a couple of his favorite songs from the movie there. Crazy on You by Heart. Yeah. And Thes, This Is the Day. So, yeah, that was, of course, anytime I hear This Is the Day, I just think Empire Records. So, but yeah, so there was a lot of good songs there. I was partial to Rainbow's cover of Since You've Been Gone. So, yeah, good old Russ Ballard tune there. So, yeah, I dug all that stuff there. But yeah, I enjoyed Space Hog. Yeah, I was glad in the meantime, got a good thing there. Even Radiohead got a bit of a shout out because not only did Creep get played in the song, but they played the acoustic version, which is even the slower, far more depressing. So it kind of almost sets a good tone for the beginning of the movie. But yeah, so that was good playlist there. Enjoyed all that stuff. But yeah, so like I said, I'm just very curious to see. The Guardians can certainly return. Whether or not James Gunn will be at the helm, probably not, seeing as he's going to be busy over at DC for a while. So we could see the Guardians in other hands. Whether they see, a new director take on, or whether somebody that Marvel's worked with before, could work. That's kind of a toss up, and up to opinion there. But yeah, like I said, the Guardians, much like the Avengers, can certainly come back with a new roster because the Guardians roster has changed so much over the years. I mean, we haven't even seen hardly any of the members of the original Guardians from the 1970s run of the book. The character that Sylvester Stallone plays, Stakar or Starhawk, very different version than what he is in the comics. But that's one of them. Ving Rhames played Charlie 27. We saw him briefly in the second volume. We didn't see him in this one. So there's a couple of characters from the original run, even Yondu was part of the original Guardians, even though the Michael Rooker version of Yondu is much different. Uh, Basically, Yondu in the book is much more kind of the uh, noble warrior, almost kind of a kind of like a Native American sort of feel to him, because he does use the bow and the single arrow, and he uses, basically uses the whistle, and it does all the things it does there. But yeah, he's much more of a spiritual warrior sort of thing like that. Much more of a primitive race that he comes from, of warriors, and they live in caves and have ceremonial weaponry and a lot of ceremony themselves about, coming of age and certain stages and passages that people go through in their lives. So all sorts of stuff there. So basically, that Yondu is way different than what we see in the movies. But there's a few other members that we didn't get to see. Didn't get to see them in the original form, so we can see some of that. We can see other members of the Guardians from the DNA run in the 2000s that we didn't get to see, like Nova, Bug, possibly from the Micronauts. If they ever get the rights to that sort of thing like that. Phyla-Vell when she grows up. Even Moondragon, who is initially an Avenger in the books, but then eventually, she becomes a Guardian. So, and is also the biological daughter of Drax, the Destroyer, in the comics. So, there may be something there. So, yeah, either way. So, there's a lot of possibilities of how we can bring the Guardians back in different ways and see how they've grown from there. Or even, like I said, one day Pratt may return to the role for Star-Lord. So, or we could just have somebody else in the mask and we never see their face. I don't know, either way. So, but yeah, like I said, overall, I enjoyed the film. I saw where they made some changes. Didn't really have any problems with them, but I know there's a lot of folks who've basically been crying foul over how Adam Warlock is in the movie. It's not the way he's. Yes, he's not the Infinity Gauntlet Adam Warlock. He's the earlier version of it. So check out some of his stuff in Fantastic Four before we get to him in the 90s, and you'll see a very different character there. So, and maybe a little more similar than how he is in the movie. High Evolutionary, I thought he was great. They kept most of his look, even though he doesn't have the fancy helmet that basically covers his face, but kind of like his face is the helmet itself. So, and interestingly enough, High Evolutionary goes down with the ship. Like, the Guardians don't outright kill him, but they leave him pretty badly wounded, and he's on the ship, and the ship does blow up. But much like Hela and Surtur in Thor Ragnarok, didn't see a body. So we could possibly bring this villain back, much like them, if we want to in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, we'll see. But like I said, overall, I enjoyed this one. This is definitely one of the better Marvel films of this particular phase, or basically the last. This is kind of starting a new phase. So of Phase 4, I should say. Definitely a much better film there. Like I said, just, I can't say I love it. It's not my favorite of the Guardians films. I think it's still going to be the first. But this was, a nice cap to things. I liked how they ended things out, and, kind of gave us a, glimpse for the future. So, yeah, I certainly want to know what you guys think here. We've already had several comments already, but yeah, I want to know what you guys think. What your take was on the film. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you have any problems with it? Or, did you kind of accept how the things are changing? So, yeah, I'm very curious to see what you guys think about that. So, we're going to wrap things up for this week. Of course, once again, got to plug the Creative Overload. Once again, coming up on May 27th, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Access Care Community Center on DuPont Road in Louisville, Kentucky. Admission's $5 per person. If they're 12 and under, they get in free. So there you go. This is a convention by artists for artists. So this basically celebrates people from Louisville, from around the region, Southern Indiana, other places around. This is them selling their wares directly to you. So you're buying from them, you're supporting local art. And this is art in all forms. You're going to get, crafts, you're going to get paintings. There's authors there, artists of, doing comic art, doing, more fancy stuff, or even, craft art, leatherworking, all sorts of things there. So God knows what it is. We're going to find out a lot more next week on the Fanatic Forum when I have artist and organizer Bill Hood on. So basically, we'll talk all things geek. Then, of course, we're going to definitely talk a lot about creative overload and what to expect on there. So for that, I will leave you, and you guys have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you guys next time on the Fanatic Forum. Take care. Bye-bye.